PRS system for immigrants to pick fruit, they decided that they would determine when the fruit was ready. Fruit doesn't work like that. Talking of fruit, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to illustrate the point. Apples picked from a tree in my own garden. We call this the Labour tree. Apples picked from a tree in my own garden in Moana. We call these the natural tree. We don't...
Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Is it a point of order?
No, it's
Chris Hipkins.
But, Mr. Speaker, I think the member's out of his tree, if that's the very best that he can come up with. Mr. Speaker, it's always a privilege to follow the former Member of Parliament from the West Coast. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that have already given up. A government that 3 years in have already given up, and their plan is simply to cut our way to the brighter future that John Key promised us. And we know that if they can't cut it, they're going to sell it. And if they can't sell it, they're going to contract it out. Because this is a government that isn't all about delivering a brighter future for New Zealand. It's a government that have given up, and now they are simply content to manage New Zealand's decline. They have given up trying to give New Zealanders the brighter future that John Key said he was all about. Now it is simply all about decline. Because let's go back and remember what John Key promised New Zealanders before the last election. He said, there is so much material that I've only got 5 minutes, but there's so much material. He says, I need to be able to look New Zealanders in the eye and assure them that the money they pay in tax is being spent wisely and as much benefit as possible is going to frontline services from which they will directly benefit. Well, how's that manifest itself in the last few weeks? Well, they've spent money on giving staff at MFAT who are going to lose their jobs advice about getting themselves pets that offer unconditional love, taking yoga classes, meditating. This is what they're spending money on. That's not frontline services by anybody's definition, but that's what this government seems to think they should be spending the public's money on. But John Key seems to think he can look New Zealanders in the eye and justify that. National will be going ahead with its program of tax cuts because these tax cuts will not be at the expense of public services. Well, have we seen any evidence of that? No, we haven't. 2,500 people out of jobs already, and more to come. And more to come. And what's wrong with public service reform? Many New Zealanders will ask themselves. Well, I'll quote John Key on that one as well, who said that structural change and significant reorganisations tend to create more problems than they solve. That was John Key that said that. The Prime Minister, John Key, said that. He's not saying that anymore. He said there will be no wholesale reorganisation across the public sector, and yet what have we seen? Massive reorganisation. But the thing that I want to talk about the most is that hoax that John Key and his party played on the New Zealand public when they said we will be putting more into the front line. We will be moving resources from the back office to the front line. And let's quote from John Key here again. We are not in any way going to reduce the number of frontline staff. Let me make this absolutely clear. Under National, the number of doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, police and other frontline staff will grow. Well, what have we seen? In recent weeks we've seen DHB saying they're going to have to lay staff off because they haven't got enough money. The police have been told they have to save $360 million over the next 3 years. Foreign Affairs having to save $40 million a year in spending, putting 305 people out of their jobs. We've got health boards up and down the country talking about cutting medical professionals' jobs because of this government's underfunding of the public service. We've got them talking about increasing class sizes and having fewer teachers in front of kids because of this government's unwillingness to fund it. This is not a government focused on the front line. They are cutting into frontline services. They are removing health board services. I know from my own electorate where literally hundreds, if not thousands, of older people have found the frontline staff that deliver their home help have had their hours cut. Older New Zealanders have had their home help cut. Home help is one of the best examples of a frontline service that's been cut under this government. There is no better example, by the very definition of the word frontline, than our Defence Force. Our Defence Force, the very nature, the very definition of the word frontline comes from the Defence Force, and the Defence Force is being cut under this national government, despite their promise that they would not cut frontline public services. It was a hollow promise that they made New Zealanders before the 2008 general election. One of the many things that this national government said to New Zealanders in order to get themselves elected, and then now they've given up. They've given up on delivering a brighter future. They have given up on fulfilling their promises. Now they are content to manage our economic decline.
Nikki Kay. Nikki Kay.
Mr. Speaker, I am delighted to be able to speak in